The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through stars, planets, and the space between. But what happens when something arrives that operates outside that ancient power? A weapon so precise, so absolute, that even the Sith Lords who command star-spanning fleets must pause and reconsider the nature of ultimate power. In the third year before the Battle of Yavin, the Galactic Empire stood at the zenith of its tyrannical reign. Emperor Palpatine's iron grip strangled 1,000 systems. The Death Star, that monument to fear and technological supremacy, orbited in secret construction yards while rebel cells fought desperate battles across the Outer Rim. On worlds from Coruscant to Tatooine, beings whispered that the Empire's might was unassailable, that resistance meant only death. They were wrong. Above Nar Shaddaa, the smuggler's moon, that vertical city of vice orbiting the Hutt homeworld, space rippled. Not with the familiar blue-white flash of hyperspace, but with something else entirely. Something that made the Force itself shudder, as if reality had been punctured by a needle from beyond known dimensions. No ship emerged, no fleet materialized. Instead, a space station, sleek, angular, bristling with sensor arrays and a single massive cannon that dominated its superstructure, simply existed where moments before there had been nothing. The platform's hull bore no Imperial insignia, no rebel markings, no identification from any known government or criminal enterprise. Just smooth, dark metal that seemed to absorb the light from Nar Shaddaa's neon-soaked surface. Inside the station's command center, Marcus Vega gripped the tactical console as reality stabilized around him. The dimensional heist had gone catastrophically wrong. One moment he'd been hovering over Los Santos, preparing to execute another lucrative contract. The next, his entire orbital platform had been ripped through some kind of spatial anomaly, and now his instruments showed readings that made absolutely no sense.
"Computer, status report," Marcus commanded, his voice tight with controlled tension. He was a man who'd made billions in his reality by offering one service: precision deletion of problems too difficult for conventional weapons. The orbital cannon had made him wealthy beyond measure and wanted by every government in his world. Now he appeared to be somewhere else entirely. The station's AI responded in its cold, synthetic tone. Platform integrity, 98%. Cannon systems, fully operational. Orbital position stable above unidentified urban planet. Warning, stellar cartography does not match any known star system. Recommendation, establish communication protocols and determine current location. Marcus pulled up the external view screens. The planet below was unlike anything in his databases. A moon, actually, covered entirely in layered cities that climbed kilometers into the atmosphere. Ships of impossible design filled the space lanes, wedge-shaped destroyers, nimble fighters with wings that shifted configuration, freighters that looked like they'd been assembled from scrap. And in the distance, a massive gas giant dominated the viewport, its bands of color swirling in hypnotic patterns. "This isn't Earth space," Marcus muttered. "Computer, scan for communication frequencies. I need to know where the hell we are." The scan took less than 30 seconds. Hundreds of thousands of signals flooded the spectrum, but none in any language his translator recognized initially. Then the AI's processing matrix began identifying patterns, extrapolating meaning from context and mathematical principles. Words formed on his screen: Galactic Empire, Hutt Cartel, Nar Shaddaa, hyperspace routes, the Force. Marcus leaned back in his command chair, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. A new galaxy, new clients, new opportunities. The orbital cannon's recharge cycle had just completed before the dimensional jump, which meant he had one shot ready to demonstrate his services.
He activated the station's broadcast system, selecting a wide-band frequency that his scans indicated would reach every ship and settlement in the immediate orbital space. Attention all vessels and interested parties. This orbital platform is now open for business. I offer a simple service: precision elimination of any target within planetary range. No target too difficult, no questions asked, payment negotiable. To demonstrate my capabilities, I will now accept one complimentary contract. First credible offer wins. The response was immediate chaos. Marcus watched his communication systems light up with hundreds of responses, threats, mockery, demands for identification, and a few cautiously interested inquiries. He filtered through the noise until one message caught his attention. It came from the surface, from a massive palace complex in Nar Shaddah's industrial sector. The message was in a language his computer struggled to translate. Huttese, apparently, but the meaning was clear enough. Gracchus the Hutt, a crime lord of considerable local power, demanded Marcus surrender his station immediately or face consequences. Marcus checked the targeting system. The orbital cannon scanners could resolve individual beings on the surface from orbit. He zoomed in on the palace complex, identifying what appeared to be a heavily fortified compound with anti-aircraft installations and hundreds of armed guards. Perfect. Computer, plot firing solution on these coordinates. Target the central courtyard of that palace complex. I want a demonstration that leaves no doubt about our capabilities. Warning. Firing will expose platform position and capabilities to all observing parties. Stealth protocols will be compromised.
That's the point. In business, you can't sell what people don't know you have. Charge the cannon. The orbital cannon hummed to life, drawing power from the station's reactor core. Marcus had fired this weapon hundreds of times in his original reality, but the process never lost its savage elegance. The targeting laser painted an invisible line from orbit to surface, designating the precise impact point. Tracking systems locked on, compensating for planetary rotation and atmospheric conditions. Somewhere on Nar Shaddah's surface, Gracchus the Hutt was undoubtedly preparing his forces to deal with this unknown threat in orbit. The crime lord had no way of knowing that he'd already been designated a marketing opportunity. Marcus pressed the firing stud. The orbital cannon unleashed hell in a beam of concentrated energy that burned through atmosphere in less than a second. There was no warning, no chance for shields or evasion. One moment Gracchus's palace complex existed. The next, the central courtyard and everything within a 50-meter radius simply ceased to exist. The energy beam carved through reinforced structures, vaporized stone and metal, and left a perfectly circular crater that glowed with residual heat. Secondary explosions rippled through the complex as ammunition stores and power generators detonated. The palace, which had stood for decades as a monument to Hutt power, collapsed inward like a dying star. Thousands of beings in the surrounding district stared in horror at the destruction. A surgical strike from orbit that demonstrated power rivaling Imperial turbolaser bombardment, but with precision that suggested intelligence and purpose rather than random violence. Marcus watched the destruction through his view screen, satisfied with the demonstration. The cannon would need 48 hours to fully recharge, but one shot was all he needed to make his point. He opened the broadcast channel again.
Demonstration complete. As you can see, my services are genuine. I now accept serious offers for future contracts. Standard terms: provide target coordinates, make payment, and your problem ceases to exist. The orbital cannon delivers absolute results. The communication channels exploded with activity. Some signals emanated from other orbital stations, criminal enterprises, Marcus assumed, based on the encrypted nature of their transmissions. Others came from the surface, from dozens of factions that apparently competed for control of this vertical city. But 3 signals caught his immediate attention. The first came from a massive ship entering orbit, a vessel shaped like a dagger, kilometers long and bristling with weapons. The transmission identified it as an Imperial star destroyer, the Tyranny, and its captain demanded immediate surrender of the orbital platform in the name of Emperor Palpatine and the Galactic Empire. The second originated from deeper in the system, from what appeared to be a coalition of smaller ships. The transmission was more cautious, offering negotiation rather than demands. They identified themselves as representatives of various Hutt Kajadiks, crime families, Marcus's translator helpfully provided, interested in acquiring his services or his technology. The third signal was encrypted heavily, bouncing through multiple relay points before reaching his station. When his AI finally decrypted it, the message was brief. We represent parties interested in using your weapon against Imperial targets. Name your price. Time sensitive. Marcus studied the 3 offers, his mind already calculating possibilities. In his original reality, he'd operated in a world where governments and corporations competed for power, but generally maintained certain boundaries. Here, from what his sensors were showing him, the situation appeared far more volatile. The Empire controlled massive military forces. The Hutts ran criminal enterprises on a scale that dwarfed anything on Earth. And somewhere in the shadows, rebels fought against overwhelming odds. He was a businessman, not a revolutionary. His loyalty was to profit and survival, in that order. But he was also smart enough to recognize that choosing the wrong client in this new galaxy could mean swift termination. And unlike Los Santos, where he understood the players and their limitations, here he was navigating completely unknown waters. The first wave of TIE fighters disintegrated in blossoms of fire and debris. Marcus's point defense systems, designed to intercept hypersonic missiles and military aircraft in his home reality, found the Empire's standard fighters almost laughably vulnerable. The twin-ion engines that gave the craft their distinctive scream provided excellent speed but virtually no armor, a design philosophy that prioritized numbers over survivability. 12 targets eliminated, the AI reported dispassionately. 60 remaining in attack formation. Second wave launching from Imperial vessel. Marcus watched the tactical display with professional detachment. Each destroyed fighter represented a dead pilot, but he'd stopped feeling guilt about such things years ago. The Empire had demanded his surrender and responded to his refusal with immediate violence. In his experience, once someone opened fire, the conversation shifted from negotiation to survival. The TIE fighters adjusted their approach, spreading into a wider formation to complicate targeting solutions. Whoever commanded them had recognized that concentrated attacks only fed his point defense systems. Smart. Marcus toggled through his defensive options, calculating how long he could maintain this stalemate.
The answer was troubling. His station carried enough ammunition and power for an extended engagement, but the Star Destroyer wasn't committing its full strength yet. The massive vessel hung in orbit like a dagger pointed at his throat, its turbo laser batteries silent but ready. They were testing him, probing his defenses, gathering intelligence. Marcus had played this game before. Show too much strength too quickly, and overwhelming force arrived to eliminate the threat. Show too much weakness, and scavengers descended to tear apart the wounded prey. The key was demonstrating capability while maintaining mystery. Make them cautious enough to negotiate rather than simply attacking with everything they had. He opened a narrow beam communication channel to the Star Destroyer. Imperial vessel tyranny, this is the orbital cannon platform. I'm a businessman, not a combatant. Recall your fighters and we can discuss terms like civilized people. Continue this attack and I'll be forced to demonstrate capabilities beyond point defense systems. The response came from a clipped, authoritative voice that spoke Basic with an accent Marcus's translator identified as Core World's Imperial Standard. Captain Prawl, apparently, though the man didn't bother introducing himself.
Unknown platform, you have violated Imperial space and demonstrated hostile capability by destroying property belonging to Gracchus the Hutt, an individual operating under Imperial sanction in this sector. You will deactivate all weapons, prepare for boarding, and surrender control of your station. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. You have 60 seconds. Marcus laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Captain, in my experience, people who issue 60-second ultimatums are usually bluffing. If you could destroy me easily, you'd have fired already instead of sacrificing pilots. So here's my counteroffer. I'll accept a contract from the Empire to eliminate targets of your choosing at competitive rates. Or you can keep throwing fighters at my defenses until your superiors ask why you wasted military assets on a provider of services the Empire might find useful. There was a pause. Marcus could imagine the Imperial officer consulting with subordinates, weighing options, calculating risks. The silence stretched for 15 seconds before Prawl responded. Your services are irrelevant. The Empire possesses sufficient firepower to eliminate any target without requiring outside contractors. Stand down or be destroyed. Then why haven't you opened fire with your main batteries? Marcus asked, his voice calm and conversational. I'm reading weapons capable of glassing this moon from orbit, yet you sent fighters instead. Either you're cautious about collateral damage in a populated system, or you want my station intact. Either way, negotiation serves both our interests better than escalation. Another pause. The TIE fighters maintained their positions, but held fire, circling the station like predators waiting for a command. Marcus's sensors detected the Star Destroyer's turbo laser batteries charging, a clear threat, but not yet fired. The dance continued.
Then a new signal cut through the standoff. It came from the planet's surface, from multiple sources simultaneously, and it carried enough transmission power to override every other communication in the system. Marcus's screens filled with an image that his cultural database struggled to parse. A massive slug-like creature, easily 4 meters long, with intelligent eyes and a mouth that suggested both menace and negotiation. The Hutt spoke in that same guttural language his computer had identified earlier, but the translation arrived instantly. I am Jabba Desilogich Tiore, Lord of the Hutt Cartel and Master of Enterprises across this sector. The weapon platform has demonstrated capabilities of interest to my organization.
Captain Prawl, you will cease military operations in my territory immediately. The Empire's reach does not extend to private business negotiations between independent contractors. Marcus felt a surge of dark satisfaction. The power dynamics were becoming clearer. The Empire commanded military force, but the Hutts, these crime lords, wielded economic and political influence that even Imperial officers had to respect. At least in systems like this, far from the galactic core.
Captain Prawl's response was icy. Lord Jabba, the Empire has jurisdiction over all threats to galactic security. This unknown platform has demonstrated destructive capability that cannot be allowed to fall into criminal hands. I respectfully suggest you remain uninvolved while Imperial forces secure the situation. Your suggestion is noted and rejected, Captain. This moon operates under agreements established long before your Emperor declared himself ruler of the galaxy. My representatives are prepared to make an offer for this platform's services. Unless you wish to explain to Governor Stronhurst why Imperial interference cost the cartel's cooperation in 50 other systems, you will withdraw and allow negotiations to proceed. Marcus watched the exchange with growing appreciation. These weren't just crime families. The Hutts operated with diplomatic immunity that rivaled planetary governments. The Empire's officer clearly wanted to override their claims, but was constrained by political considerations beyond simple military strength. Before Captain Prawl could respond, a third transmission cut through the standoff. This one was audio only, heavily encrypted, and bounced through so many relay points that tracing its origin would be virtually impossible.
All parties should be aware that the Rebel Alliance has intelligence operatives throughout this system. Any attempt by the Empire to seize this platform will be met with immediate military response. We propose a joint custody arrangement until the platform's operator can be properly vetted as a neutral party. The channel went silent, but the threat lingered. Marcus's sensors detected ships powering up throughout Nar Shaddah's orbital space. Not Imperial vessels, but smaller craft that had been hiding among the commercial traffic. Rebel forces, apparently, ready to intervene if the Empire made a move. Wonderful, Marcus muttered. A three-way standoff. Computer, update threat assessment. Imperial forces. 1 Star Destroyer, approximately 140 TIE fighters, orbital superiority advantage. Hutt cartel, unknown ground forces, extensive criminal network, political leverage. Rebel Alliance, estimated 12 Corvette-class vessels, unknown starfighter complement, guerrilla tactics likely. Recommendation: negotiate with all parties while maintaining defensive posture. Marcus studied the tactical situation, his mind racing through possibilities. In his original reality, he'd operated by maintaining strict neutrality, providing services to whoever paid, refusing to take sides in conflicts between governments and insurgents. But here, the situation was more complex.
The smart play would be to auction his services to the highest bidder. Let them compete, drive up the price, establish his value before committing to any faction. But the dangerous play, the one that might keep him alive long enough to figure out this galaxy, was to demonstrate that he couldn't be easily controlled by any single power. He opened a broadcast channel to all parties. Attention, Imperial forces, Hutt cartel representatives, and Rebel Alliance operatives. I appreciate the attention my arrival has generated. However, I operate as an independent contractor, not as a faction asset. I will now demonstrate my neutrality by accepting contracts from multiple parties, purely for business purposes, you understand.
The orbital cannon's next available firing window is in approximately 47 hours. I'm accepting bids for that time slot right now. Highest offer wins, with one condition. I reserve the right to refuse contracts that would position me as exclusively loyal to any single faction. The response was immediate and chaotic. Captain Prohl transmitted a terse demand that Marcus cease all communication with criminal and insurgent elements. Jabba's representatives countered with an offer of 1 million credits, whatever those were, for a strike against an unspecified rival. The rebel transmission requested a private channel to discuss mutually beneficial arrangements.
Marcus was about to respond when his long-range sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. A new ship was entering the system, smaller than the Star Destroyer, but radiating a presence that his instruments struggled to quantify. The vessel was wedge-shaped like Imperial designs, but darker, more ominous, and it broadcast an identification code that caused the Star Destroyer's crew to immediately stand down their attack posture. Computer, identify that vessel. Analyzing. Designation, Executor Class Star Dreadnought, Devastator. Classification, Personal Flagship. Commander, Lord Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith and Supreme Commander of Imperial Forces. Marcus felt ice crystallize in his chest. His cultural database had been absorbing information since his arrival, building profiles of major players in this galaxy. Darth Vader's name appeared in hundreds of reports, an enforcer of terrifying power, commander of fleets, and something called a Sith Lord that his computer couldn't fully explain, except to note that such individuals were considered extremely dangerous. The Devastator moved through space with predatory grace, its escort fleet of smaller Star Destroyers falling into formation. TIE fighters streamed from its hangars in numbers that dwarfed Captain Prohl's complement. The massive vessel took up position directly between Marcus's orbital platform and the planet below, cutting off any potential escape vector. A new transmission arrived. The voice was deep, mechanically modulated, and carried absolute authority.
Orbital platform. I am Darth Vader, and I will have your cooperation or your destruction. There will be no negotiation with criminal elements. There will be no auction of services. You will surrender control of your weapon to the Galactic Empire immediately, or I will personally board your station and take it by force. You have 1 minute to comply. Marcus stared at the view screen, watching the Devastator's weapons systems come online. Turbolasers capable of reducing his station to atoms locked on to his position. Fighter squadrons arranged themselves for assault patterns that would overwhelm his point defenses through sheer numbers. And somewhere on that massive ship, Darth Vader, a name spoken with fear across this entire galaxy, waited for compliance. Every instinct Marcus had developed over years of survival screamed at him to submit, to preserve his life and his asset by bowing to superior force. But he'd also learned that submission to overwhelming power often meant becoming expendable, a tool to be used and discarded when convenient. He took a breath and made his choice. Lord Vader, I appreciate the directness of your approach. However, I have a counter-proposal. Before you commit your forces to destroying a platform that could provide services valuable to the Empire, let me demonstrate something. I've been analyzing the ships in this system, and I notice several vessels broadcasting transponder codes that match known Rebel Alliance patterns. Give me coordinates for one such vessel, something you'd like eliminated anywhere.
and I'll provide a free demonstration of how precise my targeting can be." The silence that followed lasted 5 seconds, an eternity in tactical time. Marcus watched his sensors, knowing that Vader could order an attack at any moment. TIE fighters held their positions. Turbolasers remained locked on target. Then Vader's voice returned, and Marcus detected something new in the mechanical tone. Not quite interest, but perhaps calculation. "You propose to demonstrate your loyalty by eliminating rebel forces."
"I propose to demonstrate my capability by eliminating whatever target you designate. Loyalty is earned through repeated service, Lord Vader. But capability can be proven immediately. One shot, your choice of target. Then we discuss terms like professionals." Another pause. Marcus could feel the weight of decision hanging in the vacuum between his station and the Devastator. Around Nar Shaddah's orbit, dozens of factions held their breath, waiting to see if the independent weapons dealer would survive his first encounter with the Empire's ultimate enforcer. "Very well," Vader said finally. "Transmitting target coordinates now. A rebel corvette attempting to hide among civilian traffic near the 3rd orbital anchorage. Eliminate it, and we will discuss the possibility of your continued existence." Marcus pulled up the coordinates. His targeting sensors identified a ship exactly where Vader indicated. A small military vessel trying to mask its energy signature by running silent among dozens of civilian freighters. The rebels had positioned themselves well, knowing that Imperial forces would hesitate to fire indiscriminately into commercial traffic.
But the orbital cannon didn't have that limitation. Marcus could target a single individual in a crowded street and leave everyone else untouched. A ship, even a small one, was easy by comparison. "Target acquired," Marcus confirmed. "Firing solution locked. One question before I pull the trigger. Are there any non-combatants aboard that I should know about? I'm in the business of eliminating problems, not creating political martyrs." "The vessel is confirmed military. There are no innocents aboard a rebel ship. Fire when ready." Marcus's finger hovered over the firing stud. Somewhere on that corvette, rebel crew members had no idea they'd been designated for execution. They were fighting for their beliefs, opposing what they saw as tyranny, probably hoping to make a difference in a galaxy crushed under authoritarian rule. And Marcus was about to kill them to prove his worth to that same authoritarian power. He pressed the stud. The orbital cannon spoke with thunder, and another demonstration of its absolute precision carved through the black. The beam struck the rebel corvette amidships, penetrating shields that were designed against turbo-laser bombardment, but useless against directed energy of this magnitude. The ship exploded in a brief, brilliant flash. No survivors, no wreckage large enough to matter, just expanding plasma and debris that would eventually burn up in atmospheric re-entry. Silence fell across every communication channel. The Empire's forces watched with satisfaction. The Hutt cartel's representatives recalculated their offers, and the remaining rebel ships in the system suddenly realized that their careful concealment meant nothing against an enemy who could target them with surgical precision from orbital range. Marcus watched the fireball fade and felt the familiar emptiness that always followed these demonstrations. Another group of people who'd woken up that morning with plans and hopes, now reduced to atoms.
He'd long ago accepted that his business required such sacrifices, but acceptance didn't mean enjoyment. Demonstration complete, Lord Vader. 46 hours until the cannon can fire again. Now, shall we discuss terms? Vader's response was immediate and final.
Impressive. However, the Empire does not negotiate with independent contractors when annexation serves our purposes better. You have proven your platform's value. Now I will take possession of it. Prepare for boarding. Your cooperation will be noted in my report to the Emperor. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Of course, he'd just made himself too valuable to ignore and too dangerous to leave independent. Vader intended to seize the station, claim its technology, and probably eliminate Marcus as soon as Imperial technicians understood how the orbital cannon functioned. "Computer," Marcus said quietly. "Activate Protocol Omega. Authorization code Vega 779. Acknowledged. Protocol Omega active. Station self-destruct armed. Detonation in 10 minutes unless command override entered." Marcus opened the channel to Vader one final time. "Lord Vader, you've made your position clear, so let me clarify mine. This station has a self-destruct system capable of generating an antimatter explosion equivalent to a small nuclear device. If your forces attempt to board, I'll trigger it immediately. The Empire can have a crater in orbit, or the Empire can have a contractor who eliminates problems you can't afford to handle publicly. Your choice. You have 9 minutes to decide." The tactical situation had just shifted from stalemate to suicide watch, and Marcus Vega, businessman from another reality, waited to see if Darth Vader would blink first. The Imperial Star Destroyer was approaching his position, fighter squadrons launching from its hangar bays. TIE fighters, his computer identified them from database analysis of the signals, swarmed toward his station in attack formation. Marcus counted 72 fighters in the first wave alone, with more launching every second. Computer, raise defensive shields, activate point defense systems, and calculate how long until the cannon can fire again. Shields at maximum, point defense online, cannon recharge time, 47 hours, 53 minutes. Warning, incoming fighter craft are within attack range in 90 seconds. Marcus allowed himself a thin smile. He'd operated his orbital cannon in a reality where military forces constantly tried to destroy or seize his platform. The station wasn't just a weapon. It was a fortress designed to survive everything from missile strikes to special forces infiltration. These TIE fighters, whatever they were, would learn that the hard way. "Let them come," he said quietly. "Time to see if this Empire has what it takes to collect their demands. And time to see who's really willing to pay for power in this galaxy." The first wave of TIE fighters opened fire, green energy bolts streaking through space toward the orbital platform. Marcus watched them come, his fingers already dancing across the tactical console. The station's point defense turrets swiveled to track the incoming targets, calculating firing solutions with the same precision that made the orbital cannon so devastating. In the command center of the Star Destroyer Tyranny, Captain Prawl watched the engagement unfold with growing unease. The unknown station had demonstrated firepower that rivaled an Imperial bombardment, and now it was preparing to defend itself against the Empire's might.
He'd already transmitted situation reports to Coruscant and to Lord Vader's flagship, but responses would take time. For now, he had his orders: secure or destroy the platform before criminal elements could claim it.
What Captain Prawl didn't know, what none of the competing factions scrambling to control Marcus Vega could know, was that the orbital cannon's arrival had been noticed by forces far beyond Nar Shaddah's orbit. In the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine felt a disturbance in the Force, a presence that existed outside the natural order, and on a distant rebel flagship, intelligence officers analyzed reports of a new weapon that might shift the balance of a war they were slowly losing. The game had begun, and Marcus Vega, businessman and weapons dealer from a reality where orbital strikes cost cryptocurrency, was about to learn that in a galaxy where Sith Lords commanded planet-killing space stations, neutrality was not an option. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The TIE fighters closed in, and the station's guns opened fire.
The truth was more complicated. Marcus had survived in his original reality by being willing to destroy his own assets rather than let them fall into hands that would hunt him forever. But that was Earth, where he'd had contingency plans, hidden resources, and escape routes carefully prepared over years. Here, in this alien galaxy, destroying his station meant ending his only advantage and likely his life. Still, Vader didn't need to know that. "Lord Vader," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady, "7 minutes remaining. I'm a reasonable man. Let me propose something that serves both our interests. The Empire gets access to precision orbital strikes without dedicating military resources. I get to continue existing. You don't have to explain to your Emperor why a potentially valuable asset was reduced to orbital debris." The response came not from Vader, but from Captain Prawl, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury. "You dare threaten the Empire with suicide? Lord Vader will strip the truth from your mind once you're in custody. Your pathetic gambit only delays the inevitable." Marcus smiled grimly. "Captain, in my experience, people who think outcomes are inevitable usually haven't considered all the variables. I'm offering the Empire a service it doesn't currently have: completely deniable precision strikes that can't be traced to Imperial forces. That has value in a galaxy where you're fighting insurgents who hide among civilian populations." Before Prawl could respond, Vader's mechanically modulated voice cut through the channel. "You assume the Empire requires deniability. We rule through strength, not shadows. Fear of Imperial might keeps order across 1,000 systems. What use do we have for precision when overwhelming force achieves the same result?"
The 9 minutes stretched like hours. Marcus watched his tactical display, tracking the Devastator's fighter squadrons as they repositioned for what would likely be a boarding assault. His hand rested near the self-destruct override panel, not touching it, but close enough to trigger the sequence if Vader's forces made their move. The bluff was only effective if Vader believed he'd actually do it. Because overwhelming force creates martyrs, Marcus countered, watching his countdown timer tick below 6 minutes. "That rebel corvette I just eliminated? If you'd destroyed it with turbo-laser bombardment, you'd have damaged a dozen civilian ships in the process. The rebels would broadcast footage of Imperial forces slaughtering innocents. But my shot? Clean, precise, no collateral damage. The rebels know one of their ships exploded, but they can't use it as propaganda because no civilians died. That's the difference between a hammer and a scalpel, Lord Vader. Sometimes you need the latter." Silence answered him. 5 minutes remained. Marcus could see assault shuttles launching from the Devastator's hangar bays, stormtrooper transports moving into position. They weren't rushing, not yet, but the implication was clear. Vader was preparing to call his bluff. Then a new transmission arrived, this one from an unexpected source. Jabba the Hutt's image filled one of Marcus's secondary screens, the massive slug speaking in Huttese that translated instantly. "The humans make valid points, Lord Vader. The Hutt cartel has operated in partnership with the Empire for years precisely because we understand the value of discrete solutions to complicated problems. Perhaps a compromise serves all interests. The cartel would be willing to broker an arrangement that allows the Empire access to this platform's services while maintaining the operator's independence. For a modest finder's fee, naturally."
Marcus's eyebrows rose. The Hutts were offering to mediate, not out of altruism, but because they recognized profit potential in keeping him operational rather than destroyed. In a perverse way, the crime lords might be his best chance at survival. Vader's response was cold. "The cartel's input is noted but unnecessary. This matter concerns Imperial security, not criminal enterprise revenue. With respect, Lord Vader," Jabba continued, his tone suggesting no respect whatsoever. "Imperial security is maintained across the Outer Rim partially through our cooperation. The cartels control supply routes, information networks, and labor forces that your stormtroopers cannot efficiently manage. Destroying a potentially valuable asset to demonstrate power serves no one's interests, except perhaps the rebels, who would celebrate the Empire's wasteful aggression." 4 minutes. Marcus watched the political maneuvering with fascination. The Hutts were leveraging their economic importance to shield him, not because they cared about his survival, but because they wanted access to his services for their own purposes. The enemy of my enemy might not be a friend, but they could be a temporary ally when interests aligned. Another signal cut through the standoff. The encrypted rebel transmission from before, now broadcasting openly. "Lord Vader, we are prepared to destroy the platform before allowing it to fall under exclusive Imperial control. Multiple rebel corvettes are positioning for torpedo runs on the station. If you attempt to board, we will eliminate this threat to galactic freedom permanently." Marcus's sensors confirmed the claim. At least 6 small rebel ships had broken cover and were accelerating toward his position, weapons armed. They'd sacrifice his station and him rather than let the Empire claim the orbital cannon. Desperate, but strategically sound from their perspective.
"Wonderful," Marcus muttered. "Everyone wants me dead or controlled. Computer, update tactical situation. Imperial forces, boarding assault imminent, overwhelming superiority. Hutt cartel, political support only, no military intervention. Rebel alliance, committed to destruction if Imperial seizure appears likely. Self-destruct timer, 3 minutes 40 seconds. Recommendation, consider alternative negotiation strategies immediately." Marcus's mind raced. He was trapped in a 3-way standoff where every faction had reasons to eliminate him if they couldn't control him. The Empire wanted his technology. The Hutts wanted to profit from his services. The rebels wanted to prevent the Empire from gaining a new superweapon. And he wanted to survive long enough to find a way home, or at least establish himself in this galaxy without becoming anyone's slave.
There was one option he hadn't tried yet. Risky, potentially suicidal, but possibly the only card he had left to play. Marcus opened a broadcast channel to every ship in the system, Imperial, Hutt, Rebel, and Civilian. All parties, listen carefully because I'm only saying this once. You're treating my platform as if it's territory to be claimed or a weapon to be seized. You're wrong. This station isn't real estate, it's a service business. And I'm about to demonstrate why forcing me to choose sides is bad strategy for everyone involved. He brought up his targeting interface and selected coordinates on Nar Shaddah's surface that his sensors had identified during his initial scans. A massive warehouse complex in the industrial sector, currently empty according to thermal imaging, owned by Zero the Hutt, one of Jabba's rival Hutt lords. That warehouse belongs to Zero the Hutt, correct? One of Jabba's competitors in the spice trade. I'm going to destroy it in exactly 30 seconds, not because anyone paid me, but to make a point. Any faction that tries to control me exclusively will create an enemy who can strike from orbit with precision none of you can match. The Empire can't guard every Imperial installation simultaneously. The Hutts can't protect every business asset. The Rebels can't hide every base. But I can hit any single target whenever my cannon recharges.
2 minutes remained on the self-destruct countdown. Marcus watched his screens, gauging reactions. Vader's assault shuttles had paused in their approach. The rebel corvettes hesitated, unsure whether to proceed with their attack runs. Jabba's communication channels were exploding with frantic chatter. So here is my offer, and it's the only one I'm making. I operate as an independent contractor, accepting jobs from any faction willing to pay. The Empire gets priority access in exchange for not trying to seize my station. The Hutts get profitable intermediary fees for brokering contracts. The Rebels get the knowledge that I won't exclusively serve the Empire, which is better than your current situation. Everyone benefits from my continued independence. Everyone suffers if any single faction tries to monopolize my services. Marcus targeted the warehouse and initiated the firing sequence. Not the orbital cannon, which was still recharging, but a conventional missile from his station's defensive arsenal. The weapon streaked down through atmosphere and detonated precisely on target, reducing Zero's warehouse to rubble and sending a clear message. Marcus could strike anywhere, anytime, and no faction could fully protect itself from his reach. Demonstration complete. Now, do we negotiate like civilized beings, or do I activate this self-destruct and deny all of you access to what I'm offering? You have 90 seconds to decide. The silence that followed was different than before, less hostile, more calculating. Marcus had shifted the dynamic from how do we control this asset to how much do we lose if we destroy it. Not ideal, but better than facing certain death or enslavement.
Vader spoke first, his mechanical breathing audible over the channel. You believe threats make you valuable rather than simply a priority for elimination. I believe demonstrating consequences makes me too expensive to eliminate. Marcus corrected. Kill me, and you get nothing. Try to enslave me, and I'll dedicate every shot to making your life difficult before I die. But partner with me, even reluctantly, and you get precision strikes that serve Imperial interests while maintaining plausible deniability. That's not a threat, Lord Vader. That's a business proposal. 60 seconds remained on the self-destruct timer. Marcus's finger hovered over the override panel, ready to cancel the sequence if Vader agreed to terms, or trigger it immediately if the assault shuttles resumed their approach. "The Empire does not negotiate with terrorists," Captain Prawl interjected, his voice sharp. "Then it's fortunate I'm not a terrorist. I'm an entrepreneur, offering a specialized service in a competitive marketplace. There's a difference." 45 seconds. The assault shuttles still held position, not retreating but not advancing. Vader was considering the offer, weighing costs against benefits in whatever calculus a Sith Lord used for such decisions. Jabba's transmission cut through again. "Lord Vader, the cartel formally requests that you allow us to establish a contract framework with this platform operator. We will guarantee his compliance with Imperial interests in exchange for modest profit sharing on civilian contracts. The arrangement benefits all parties and avoids unnecessary destruction."
30 seconds. Marcus watched the Devastator's weapons systems, expecting at any moment to see turbo lasers discharge and his station vaporized. He'd gambled everything on the assumption that Vader valued capability over dominance, pragmatism over pride. The gamble might be about to fail. 20 seconds. Vader's voice returned, and Marcus detected something in the mechanical tone that might have been grudging respect, or perhaps just cold calculation. "Very well. The Empire will permit your continued operation under the following conditions. You will accept Imperial contracts with priority over all other requests. You will provide complete intelligence on all parties who approach you for services, including the Rebel Alliance. You will not target Imperial assets under any circumstances. Violation of these terms results in immediate termination. Do you accept?" Marcus considered the terms. They were heavily weighted in the Empire's favor, but stopped short of total control. He'd retain operational independence, could accept non-Imperial contracts, and, most importantly, would stay alive long enough to establish himself in this galaxy. 10 seconds remained on the self-destruct countdown. "I accept, with one modification," Marcus said. "I'll provide intelligence on Rebel operations that directly threaten Imperial forces, but I won't betray clients who approach me for non-military services. Some level of confidentiality is necessary to maintain my reputation as a neutral contractor. Otherwise, no one trusts me, and my services become worthless to everyone."
5 seconds. "Agreed," Vader said. "Cancel your self-destruct sequence. My forces will maintain position but will not board your station. You will report to Imperial intelligence within 24 hours to establish secure communication protocols. And be advised, contractor, independence is a privilege I can revoke at any time. Prove yourself useful or prove yourself expendable." Marcus entered the override code, and the self-destruct timer froze at 3 seconds before canceling entirely. He released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, feeling adrenaline slowly drain from his system. "Understood, Lord Vader. I look forward to a profitable, professional relationship." The Devastator's assault shuttles broke off their approach vectors, returning to their mothership. The Rebel corvettes retreated back into civilian traffic, their suicide mission no longer necessary. And across dozens of Hutt cartel channels, crime lords began calculating how to profit from access to an orbital weapons platform that could eliminate rivals with surgical precision. Marcus leaned back in his command chair, his mind already working through implications. He'd survived first contact with this galaxy's dominant power, but survival wasn't the same as security. Vader had granted him independence, but that independence was conditional,
a leash rather than freedom. The Hutts would expect payment for their political intervention. The rebels would approach him eventually, hoping to turn him against the Empire, or at least gain intelligence on Imperial operations.
And somewhere in the back of his mind, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Empire Palpatine, the ruler of this galactic empire, hadn't weighed in yet. Vader commanded fleets, but someone commanded Vader. That someone would eventually take an interest in the independent weapons platform operating in his territory. Computer, begin compiling intelligence on all major factions in this galaxy. I need to understand the players, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their pressure points. If I'm going to survive here, I need to become more valuable alive than dead to everyone simultaneously. Acknowledged. Beginning intelligence compilation. Estimated completion time, 72 hours. Warning. Imperial forces are transmitting secured communications to multiple destinations. Content encrypted beyond current decryption capabilities. Marcus nodded. Vader was reporting to his superiors, which meant attention from higher powers. The next 46 hours, until the orbital cannon recharged, would determine whether his gamble had bought him genuine independence or just delayed his eventual enslavement. A new transmission arrived, this one from the planet's surface. Jabba's image filled the screen again, the Hutt's expression suggesting satisfaction, next with predatory interest. Congratulations on your successful negotiation, human. The cartel wishes to discuss exclusive contract arrangements for certain sensitive operations. We will pay generously for your services and discretion. Perhaps we can meet face to face to discuss terms. I assure you, my palace hospitality is legendary across the Outer Rim.
I appreciate the offer, Lord Jabba. Let me establish secure communications with Imperial intelligence first, as required by my agreement with Lord Vader. Then we can discuss potential contracts. I'm sure there are opportunities for mutually beneficial arrangements. Jabba's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. Indeed, the cartel looks forward to profitable partnership. And a word of advice, human. You have made powerful friends and powerful enemies today. In this galaxy, survival requires knowing which is which. Until we meet again. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone in his command center with only his AI for company. He pulled up the external view screens, watching Nar Shaddah's neon-soaked surface rotating slowly below, the Devastator's massive silhouette dominating the orbital space above him. 46 hours until his weapon could fire again. 46 hours to establish himself as valuable enough to protect, but not threatening enough to eliminate. 46 hours to understand the galaxy where Sith Lords commanded planet-killing fleets, crime families wielded political power rivaling governments, and rebels fought desperate battles against overwhelming tyranny. Marcus Vega had survived his first day in the Star Wars galaxy. Now he had to figure out how to thrive in it, or at least live long enough to find a way home. Assuming home still existed on the other side of whatever dimensional rift had brought him here. Computer, secondary priority. Begin analyzing all available data on interdimensional physics, spatial anomalies, and anything that might explain how we arrived in this reality. If there is a way back, I want to find it. Acknowledged. Analysis begun. Warning.
Local physics databases contain references to phenomena labeled hyperspace and the Force that do not correlate with known dimensional mechanics. Further study required.
Marcus nodded slowly, watching the stars beyond Nar Shaddah's orbit. Somewhere out there, across impossible distances, his original reality continued without him. Or perhaps it didn't. Perhaps the dimensional jump had erased his entire universe, leaving him stranded in this galaxy of Jedi and Sith, lightsabers and blasters, empires and rebellions. Either way, he was committed now. The orbital canon had entered the Star Wars galaxy, and Marcus Vega would either become a legend or a cautionary tale. Time would tell which.
The next 46 hours passed in a blur of intelligence gathering, encrypted communications, and navigating the treacherous politics of a galaxy that operated on rules Marcus was only beginning to understand. Imperial intelligence had assigned him a handler, a cold, efficient woman named Commander Jensen, who spoke in clipped sentences and radiated the kind of paranoid professionalism Marcus associated with intelligence operatives across every reality. She'd provided him with secure transmission codes, priority target lists, and a comprehensive briefing on enemies of the Empire that read more like a genocide checklist than legitimate military intelligence. Marcus had nodded, taken notes, and carefully filed away everything she told him under useful but morally questionable. He'd killed people for money before. That ship had sailed years ago, but there was a difference between eliminating a target who'd earned enemies through their own actions and participating in systematic oppression. The line was thin, maybe even arbitrary, but it was a line he tried to maintain. The Hutts had been more straightforward. Jabba's representatives had transmitted a list of rival operations they wanted eliminated, complete with payment structures that would make Marcus wealthy by any standard. Spice warehouses belonging to competitors, pirate bases that interfered with Hutt shipping lanes, a few political targets who'd made the mistake of crossing the cartel. Standard criminal enterprise work dressed up in enough plausible deniability that Marcus could pretend he was just removing problems rather than enabling organized crime.
The rebels hadn't contacted him directly, which Marcus found both sensible and concerning. They knew he'd agreed to work with the Empire, which made him either a potential asset to turn or a threat to eliminate. Intelligence suggested they were watching him, waiting to see if he'd become another Imperial weapon or maintain enough independence to be useful. Now, as the orbital cannon's recharge cycle completed and the weapon hummed with ready power, Marcus faced his first real test of the arrangement he'd negotiated. Commander Jensen had transmitted priority coordinates, a target the Empire wanted eliminated immediately and with maximum prejudice. The briefing file appeared on his screens, a modified CR-90 corvette designated Redemption's Call, operating out of an asteroid field in the Atravis sector. The ship served as a mobile command center for a rebel cell that had been hitting Imperial supply convoys with increasing success. Intelligence indicated the vessel carried high-value targets, including a Rebel Alliance general and possibly intelligence officers who'd penetrated Imperial security networks. "Target confirmed," Jensen's voice crackled over the secure channel. "The Redemption's Call will be passing through the Kessel Run approach in 6 hours, attempting to rendezvous with smuggler contacts for resupply. We've positioned Star Destroyers to intercept, but the rebels will likely scatter into hyperspace before we can engage effectively. Your orbital platform, however, can eliminate them during their approach vector, before they detect the ambush." Marcus studied the tactical data, his professional instincts analyzing the shot. It was feasible, challenging, but feasible. The corvette would be moving at sublight speeds, following a predictable trajectory through the approach corridor. His targeting systems could track vessels moving far faster than that. One shot, one dead rebel ship, and his arrangement with the Empire would be cemented with demonstrated results.
Understood, Marcus said. Transmit final coordinates when the target enters firing range. Payment terms as previously discussed? The Empire does not pay contractors in credits, Jensen replied, her tone suggesting she found the question distasteful. Your compensation is continued operation and Imperial protection. Consider it an investment in your future service. Marcus bit back a sharp reply. He'd agreed to priority Imperial contracts, not to work for free. But arguing with an intelligence officer over payment wasn't worth compromising the fragile arrangement that kept him alive. He'd find ways to monetize his position through other channels. The Hutts were eager to pay, after all. Of course, Commander. Standing by for targeting data. The channel closed, leaving Marcus alone with his tactical displays and his thoughts. 6 hours until the shot. 6 hours to consider whether executing a rebel general and their staff qualified as legitimate military action or murder for hire. The distinction had never bothered him much before. Clients paid, targets died, and moral philosophy was a luxury for people who didn't operate orbital weapons platforms.
But something about this galaxy made the questions harder to dismiss. The Empire wasn't just another government. It was a totalitarian regime that ruled through fear and suppression. The rebels weren't terrorists. They were insurgents fighting for freedom against overwhelming tyranny. And Marcus was about to help the tyrants win. Computer, pull up all available intelligence on the target vessel's crew. I want to know who I'm killing. The AI compiled the data efficiently, displaying personnel files that Imperial intelligence had gathered through informants, intercepted communications, and surveillance. General Tria Sand, veteran of the Clone Wars, former Republic officer who defected after the Empire's rise. 3 intelligence officers, names redacted. Approximately 40 crew members, mostly volunteers from systems the Empire had brutalized. No indication of civilian passengers or non-combatants. Military targets, legitimate combatants in an active war. Marcus tried to tell himself that made it acceptable, that soldiers understood the risks when they chose to fight. But the faces staring back at him from the intelligence files didn't look like terrorists or fanatics. They looked like people who decided that living under the Empire was worse than dying against it. Incoming transmission, the AI announced. Source, encrypted relay, multiple bounce points. Rebel Alliance communication patterns detected. Marcus hesitated, then accepted the channel. A woman's voice emerged, calm, measured, with an accent that suggested core world's education and military bearing. Orbital Platform Operator, this is Commander Vess of Rebel Alliance Intelligence. I'm aware that Imperial forces have designated the Redemption's Call as your next target. I'm offering you an alternative contract, 30 million credits deposited in an untraceable account if you refuse the Imperial order and allow our people to escape safely.
Marcus leaned forward, interest piqued despite himself. Commander Vess, I admire your initiative in contacting me, but you understand that refusing an Imperial contract violates my agreement with Lord Vader. That agreement is currently the only thing keeping me alive. Your agreement with Vader is based on the assumption that you're more valuable operational than destroyed, Vess countered. I'm offering you a chance to demonstrate that value extends beyond serving Imperial interests exclusively. Accept contracts from multiple factions, prove your neutrality is genuine, and you become too politically complicated for the Empire to eliminate. Refuse, and you're just another Imperial asset they'll dispose of when convenient. The logic was sound, Marcus had to admit.
Remaining purely an Imperial tool made him expendable once they no longer needed his services or developed technology to replicate his capabilities. But accepting rebel contracts meant directly betraying his agreement with Vader, which would likely result in the Devastator reducing his station to atoms. 30 million credits is generous, Marcus said carefully. But it doesn't compensate for the Star Destroyers that will arrive to destroy me the moment I refuse an Imperial priority target, unless you're offering more than just payment. We're offering intelligence, specifically information about the Death Star project that Emperor Palpatine has been developing in secret. A planet-killing battle station that makes your orbital cannon look like a children's toy. The Empire is building a weapon that can destroy entire worlds, and once it's operational, every independent operator in the galaxy becomes irrelevant, including you. The rebels hadn't contacted him directly, which Marcus found both sensible and concerning. They knew he'd agreed to work with the Empire, which made him either a potential asset to turn or a threat to eliminate. Intelligence suggested they were watching him, waiting to see if he'd become another Imperial weapon or maintain enough independence to be useful. Now, as the orbital cannon's recharge cycle completed and the weapon hummed with ready power, Marcus faced his first real test of the arrangement he'd negotiated. Commander Jensen had transmitted priority coordinates, a target the Empire wanted eliminated immediately and with maximum prejudice. The briefing file appeared on his screens. A modified CR-90 Corvette designated Redemption's Call, operating out of an asteroid field in the Atravis sector. The ship served as a mobile command center for a rebel cell that had been hitting Imperial supply convoys with increasing success. Intelligence indicated the vessel carried high-value targets, including a Rebel Alliance general and possibly intelligence officers who'd penetrated Imperial security networks. Target confirmed. Jensen's voice crackled over the secure channel. The Redemption's Call will be passing through the Kessel Run approach in 6 hours, attempting to rendezvous with smuggler contacts for resupply. We've positioned Star Destroyers to intercept, but the rebels will likely scatter into hyperspace before we can engage effectively. Your orbital platform, however, can eliminate them during their approach vector, before they detect the ambush. Marcus studied the tactical data, his professional instincts analyzing the shot. It was feasible. Challenging, but feasible. The Corvette would be moving at sublight speeds, following a predictable trajectory through the approach corridor. His targeting systems could track vessels moving far faster than that. One shot, one dead rebel ship, and his arrangement with the Empire would be cemented with demonstrated results. Understood, Marcus said. Transmit final coordinates when the target enters firing range. Payment terms as previously discussed?
The Empire does not pay contractors in credits, Jensen replied, her tone suggesting she found the question distasteful. Your compensation is continued operation and Imperial protection. Consider it an investment in your future service. Marcus bit back a sharp reply. He'd agreed to priority Imperial contracts, not to work for free. But arguing with an intelligence officer over payment wasn't worth compromising the fragile arrangement that kept him alive. He'd find ways to monetize his position through other channels. The Hutts were eager to pay, after all. Of course, Commander. Standing by for targeting data. The channel closed, leaving Marcus alone with his tactical displays and his thoughts. 6 hours until the shot. 6 hours to consider whether executing a rebel general and their staff qualified as legitimate military action or murder for hire. The distinction had never bothered him much before. Clients paid, targets died, and moral philosophy was a luxury for people who didn't operate orbital weapons platforms. But something about this galaxy made the questions harder to dismiss. The Empire wasn't just another government. It was a totalitarian regime that ruled through fear and suppression. The rebels weren't terrorists, they were insurgents, fighting for freedom against overwhelming tyranny. And Marcus was about to help the tyrants win. Computer, pull up all available intelligence on the target vessel's crew. I want to know who I'm killing. The AI compiled the data efficiently, displaying personnel files that Imperial intelligence had gathered through informants, intercepted communications, and surveillance. General Tria Sond, veteran of the Clone Wars, former Republic officer who defected after the Empire's rise. 3 intelligence officers, names redacted. Approximately 40 crew members, mostly volunteers from systems the Empire had brutalized. No indication of civilian passengers or non-combatants. Military targets, legitimate combatants in an active war. Marcus tried to tell himself that made it acceptable, that soldiers understood the risks when they chose to fight. But the faces staring back at him from the intelligence files didn't look like terrorists or fanatics. They looked like people who decided that living under the Empire was worse than dying against it. Incoming transmission, the AI announced. Source, encrypted relay, multiple bounce points. Rebel Alliance communication patterns detected. Marcus hesitated, then accepted the channel. A woman's voice emerged, calm, measured, with an accent that suggested Core World's education and military bearing. Orbital Platform Operator, this is Commander Vess of Rebel Alliance Intelligence. I'm aware that Imperial forces have designated the Redemption's Call as your next target. I'm offering you an alternative contract. 30 million credits deposited in an untraceable account if you refuse the Imperial order and allow our people to escape safely.
Marcus leaned forward, interest piqued despite himself.
Commander Vess, I admire your initiative in contacting me, but you understand that refusing an Imperial contract violates my agreement with Lord Vader. That agreement is currently the only thing keeping me alive. Your agreement with Vader is based on the assumption that you're more valuable operational than destroyed, Vess countered. I'm offering you a chance to demonstrate that value extends beyond serving Imperial interests exclusively. Accept contracts from multiple factions, prove your neutrality is genuine, and you become too politically complicated for the Empire to eliminate. Refuse, and you're just another Imperial asset they'll dispose of when convenient. The logic was sound, Marcus had to admit. Remaining purely an Imperial tool made him expendable once they no longer needed his services or developed technology to replicate his capabilities. But accepting rebel contracts meant directly betraying his agreement with Vader, which would likely result in the Devastator reducing his station to atoms. 30 million credits is generous, Marcus said carefully. But it doesn't compensate for the Star Destroyers that will arrive to destroy me the moment I refuse an Imperial priority target, unless you're offering more than just payment. We're offering intelligence, Vess replied. Specifically, information about the Death Star project that Emperor Palpatine has been developing in secret. A planet-killing battle station that makes your orbital cannon look like a children's toy. The Empire is building a weapon that can destroy entire worlds, and once it's operational, every independent operator in the galaxy becomes irrelevant, including you.
Marcus felt ice crawl down his spine. A planet-killing weapon? His intelligence gathering had turned up rumors of a massive Imperial construction project, but nothing concrete. If the rebels had accurate intelligence about something that scale. Why tell me this? What do you gain from warning me about Imperial superweapons? Because operators like you survive by maintaining relevance, Vess explained. The Death Star makes orbital precision strikes obsolete. Why pay a contractor to eliminate a target when you can threaten to destroy their entire planet unless they surrender? You're building a business model that the Empire is about to render obsolete. We're offering you a chance to recognize that reality before it's too late. The argument was persuasive, almost too persuasive. Marcus's instincts screamed that he was being manipulated, that the rebels were playing on his self-interest to turn him against the Empire. But manipulation only worked when it contained truth, and the strategic logic was undeniable. A planet-destroying superweapon would fundamentally change galactic power dynamics, and precision orbital strikes would become as relevant as crossbows in a nuclear age. Even if I believe your intelligence about this Death Star, Marcus said slowly, refusing an Imperial target doesn't solve my problem. Vader will come for me regardless of whether I'm worried about future obsolescence.
Not if you have insurance, Vess countered. Refuse this contract, accept payment from us, and we'll leak information to the Hutts suggesting that you're playing multiple factions against each other. The cartels will see opportunity in a truly independent contractor rather than an Imperial asset. They'll pressure the Empire to maintain your operational status because you're more valuable to their interests as a free agent. Political complexity protects you better than Imperial agreements. Marcus considered the proposal, weighing risks against potential rewards. It was elegant, he had to admit, using the Hutt's economic leverage to shield him from Imperial retaliation while establishing genuine independence. But it required trusting that the rebels would actually follow through on their promises, rather than simply using him and discarding him when convenient. I need time to consider this offer, Marcus said finally. How long until the redemption's call enters my firing window? 5 hours, 40 minutes, Vess replied. I'll need your decision in the next 3 hours to give our people time to adjust their route if necessary. And Marcus, I know you're calculating costs and benefits like this is just another business transaction. But consider this, the Empire you're working for doesn't value loyalty or service. It values fear and control. Eventually, you'll stop being useful and start being threatening. We're offering you a chance to avoid that fate. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus staring at tactical displays that suddenly felt far more complicated than simple firing solutions. 5 hours to decide whether to honor his agreement with Vader or betray the Empire in favor of rebel payment and political maneuvering. 5 hours to choose between being an Imperial asset or a genuinely independent operator. His thoughts were interrupted by another incoming transmission. This one from Nar Shaddaa's surface. Jabba's image materialized, the Hutt's expression suggesting he already knew about the rebel offer. The human faces an interesting dilemma, Jabba said, his translated voice carrying amusement. The cartel has intercepted communications suggesting both Imperial and rebel interests in your next contract decision. This presents opportunities. The Hutts would be most interested in a contractor who demonstrates genuine independence from Imperial control. Such operators command premium prices for our services. 30 million credits from the rebels, plus an additional 20 million from the cartel if you refuse the Imperial target and establish your neutrality.
50 million total, enough to purchase considerable security. Marcus's eyebrows rose. The Hutts were actively encouraging him to betray the Empire, seeing profit in a truly independent weapons platform. But their support came with its own complications. Accepting Hutt money meant owing Hutt favors, and crime lord debts had a way of becoming permanent obligations. Lord Jabba, your offer is generous, but it comes with the minor complication of Darth Vader reducing my station to atoms the moment I refuse an Imperial priority target, unless the cartel is prepared to protect me from Imperial retaliation. Jabba's laugh was a wet, gurgling sound. The Empire cannot afford to alienate Hutt cooperation across 50 systems to punish one contractor. Vader is dangerous, yes, but he serves an emperor who understands political reality. Destroy you, and the cartel reconsiders its profitable arrangements with Imperial governance. Allow you to operate independently, and everyone profits. Simple economics, human. The pieces were falling into place. The rebels wanted him to refuse Imperial orders to save their people and establish his independence. The Hutts wanted him to refuse Imperial orders to create a contractor they could control through debt and payment. Both factions were leveraging his self-interest against his agreement with Vader, betting that political complications would protect him from direct Imperial retaliation.
The gamble might work, or it might result in the Devastator appearing in orbit with orders to vaporize him as an example to others who considered betraying Imperial agreements. Marcus pulled up his tactical data on the Redemption's call again, studying the corvette's approach trajectory. General Triasond and 40 crew members who'd chosen to fight rather than submit. People who believed freedom was worth dying for, facing extinction from an orbital weapons platform operated by a man who was seriously considering killing them for political convenience and a hefty payday. Computer, what's my realistic survival probability if I refuse this Imperial contract? The AI processed variables for several seconds before responding. Insufficient data to calculate precise probability. Variables include Imperial political considerations, Hutt cartel leverage, rebel intelligence value, Lord Vader's tactical priorities, and Emperor Palpatine's strategic patience. Estimated survival range 20% to 70%, depending on faction responses. Recommendation: decision requires assessment of risk tolerance versus long-term positioning. 20 to 70%. Not exactly comforting odds, but better than the 0% chance he'd face if the Empire decided he was more threatening than useful. And the rebels' intelligence about the Death Star gnawed at him. If they were right, his entire business model had an expiration date measured in months or years at most. 3 hours to decide. 3 hours to choose between honoring an agreement with tyrannical overlords or establishing genuine independence by betraying them. 3 hours to determine whether Marcus Vega would become an Imperial enforcer or carve out his own space in this galaxy's complex power dynamics. He opened a channel to Commander Jensen. "Commander, I've reviewed the targeting data for the Redemption's call. I have some concerns about the firing solution that I'd like to discuss before proceeding. Can you provide additional intelligence on the target's defensive capabilities?" It was a stalling tactic, buying himself time to gather more information before committing to either course of action. Jensen's response was sharp and suspicious. "The target's defensive capabilities are irrelevant to your orbital cannon's precision. What concerns specifically?"
The asteroid field they're transiting provides considerable cover.
If they detect my targeting laser and take evasive action into the asteroids, the shot becomes significantly more complicated. I want to ensure we're not wasting this firing cycle on a target that can simply hide until my weapon recharges." Silence answered him for several seconds. Then Jensen's voice returned, colder than before. "Are you attempting to refuse this contract, operator? Because I should remind you that your agreement with Lord Vader explicitly requires priority service for Imperial targets. Refusal constitutes breach of contract and will be addressed accordingly." Marcus kept his voice carefully neutral. "I'm not refusing, Commander. I'm conducting proper tactical assessment before committing to a shot. Professionalism requires understanding all variables. Surely Imperial intelligence appreciates thorough preparation?" Another pause. "You have 1 hour to complete your tactical assessment. After that, you will fire on the designated target or explain your refusal directly to Lord Vader. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, Commander." The channel closed. Marcus had just bought himself 1 more hour of decision time and painted a target on himself if he ultimately refused the contract. Vader would know he'd been hesitating, calculating, considering betrayal. That knowledge alone might be enough to trigger Imperial retaliation regardless of political complications. "Computer, open a channel to Commander Vess, Rebel Encryption Protocols." "This is Vess. Have you made your decision?"
"I have questions first," Marcus said. "This Death Star intelligence you mentioned, how certain are you that it's real? And how soon until it's operational?" "Our intelligence is extremely reliable," Vess replied. "Multiple sources have confirmed the project's existence, including defectors from the construction project. Current estimates suggest operational capability within months, possibly as little as 6 weeks. The Empire is accelerating the timeline." 6 weeks. Marcus felt the weight of that timeline settle over him like a death sentence for his business model. An orbital cannon that could eliminate single targets with precision became strategically irrelevant in a galaxy where the dominant power could destroy entire planets on a whim. "And if I refuse this Imperial contract, you're certain the political complications will protect me from immediate retaliation?" "Nothing in war is certain," Vess admitted. "But yes, we believe the Hutt's economic leverage combined with your demonstrated value to multiple factions will make you too politically expensive for the Empire to eliminate casually. Vader might want to kill you, but he serves an emperor who thinks in terms of galactic strategy rather than personal revenge. You become more valuable as a neutral asset than as a cautionary tale." Marcus nodded slowly, though Vess couldn't see the gesture. The logic held together, assuming the rebels and Hutts actually followed through on their promises. Big assumption, but one he was running out of time to verify. Final question. If I refuse this contract and accept your payment, what prevents the Empire from simply destroying the Redemption's call through conventional means? You save 40 people temporarily, but they're still being hunted by Star Destroyers. The Star Destroyers are positioned for ambush based on your firing window. If you refuse the contract, we have time to warn our people and adjust their route. They'll survive, and your refusal demonstrates genuine independence rather than Imperial servitude. That demonstration has value beyond this single operation. 1 hour remained before Commander Jensen's deadline. 1 hour before Marcus had to make a choice that would define his role in this galaxy: Imperial enforcer or independent operator. 1 hour before he either killed 40 rebels to maintain his agreement with Vader or betrayed that agreement in pursuit of genuine autonomy.
He thought about General Triasand and her crew, about people who'd chosen to fight against overwhelming odds because living under tyranny was worse than dying for freedom. He thought about the Death Star, about a galaxy where planet-destroying weapons made precision strikes obsolete. He thought about Vader's mechanical breathing and the weight of Imperial power that could crush him like an insect if he miscalculated. And he thought about the kind of person he wanted to be in a reality where nothing from his old life mattered except the choices he made going forward. Marcus opened the channel to Commander Vess one final time. Transfer the 30 million credits to the account I'm transmitting now, and tell General Sand that the orbital cannon is refusing its Imperial contract. She should adjust her route immediately and avoid the Kessel Run approach. Consider this my demonstration of independence. Confirmed, Maddox replied, and Marcus could hear the relief in her voice. Credits transferring now. Thank you for making the right choice. Don't thank me yet, Maddox said grimly. This decision might have just signed my death warrant. Let's see if your political calculations hold up when Vader comes calling.
He closed the channel and opened a direct transmission to the Devastator, requesting immediate communication with Lord Vader. If he was going to betray his agreement with the Empire, he'd do it directly rather than waiting for Imperial intelligence to report his refusal. Time to find out if independence was worth the cost. Palpatine's slight smile suggested he heard the rejection coming before Marcus voiced it. But you are about to refuse. How disappointing. And how predictable. I'm refusing, Marcus confirmed, because I've learned something important during my time in your galaxy. Exclusive service to any faction, even with operational autonomy, eventually transforms contractors into assets, and assets get expended when circumstances require it. I watched you orchestrate this entire situation, Your Majesty. You allowed my initial refusal of the Imperial contract specifically to observe who would approach me and what they'd reveal. That's brilliant strategy, but it also demonstrates that I'm not a partner in your eyes. I'm a gain piece you're moving around the board to generate intelligence and complicate your enemy's calculations. The Emperor's expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested attentiveness. Marcus continued, knowing he was gambling everything on his ability to articulate a position that made him more valuable independent than destroyed. Here's what I'm proposing instead. I remain genuinely independent, accepting contracts from multiple factions based on my assessment of strategic value and payment. The Empire retains priority access for operations where my precision capability provides advantages that Star Destroyers can't match. I provide intelligence on parties who approach me with contracts targeting Imperial interests. In exchange, the Empire tolerates my independence rather than attempting to control or eliminate me. You're describing the arrangement I already offered, with the modification that you retain freedom to refuse Imperial contracts when convenient. I'm describing genuine independence, with recognition that the Empire benefits from my operation even when I'm not exclusively serving Imperial objectives. A truly independent contractor generates intelligence, creates political complications for your enemies, and provides services that maintain plausible deniability. An Imperial asset does none of those things. Everyone knows who they serve, no one trusts them, and they become strategically obsolete the moment you develop equivalent capability. Palpatine leaned back slightly, steepling his fingers in a gesture that suggested contemplation.
You believe independence provides more value than loyalty? I believe independence provides different value than loyalty, Marcus replied. Lord Vader is loyal, and he's worth entire fleets in strategic terms. But Lord Vader can't infiltrate rebel cells, or broker deals with Hutt crime lords, or eliminate targets without everyone knowing the Empire was responsible. I can do those things precisely because I'm not Imperial. That capability has value if you're willing to tolerate the security risk that comes with it. The Emperor's silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Marcus watched the view screen, waiting for the rejection that would likely precede orders to destroy his station. He'd made his argument as clearly as possible. Either Palpatine would see the strategic logic, or Marcus would die defending a principle that might have been smarter to compromise. When the Emperor finally spoke, his voice carried an edge of something that might have been amusement, or respect, or perhaps just acknowledgement of an interesting position. You remind me of certain political operatives I encountered during the Clone Wars. Individuals who refused to be controlled, but proved useful precisely because their independence allowed them access and influence that official channels could not achieve. Most of them died when they overestimated their importance or underestimated the consequences of betrayal. A few survived by maintaining careful balance between usefulness and threat. Palpatine's eyes seemed to gleam with inner calculation. Very well, Marcus Vega. I will permit your independence under the following conditions. You will accept Imperial contracts when they align with your strategic interests and provide payment you deem appropriate. You will report intelligence on any party that approaches you with contracts targeting core Imperial assets, military installations, governors, Lord Vader, or myself. You will not operate in a manner that directly undermines Imperial authority in systems where order is essential to galactic stability. And you will understand that this tolerance of your independence is conditional upon your continued value exceeding your threat level.
The Emperor paused, letting the terms settle. Violate these conditions, and I will dedicate whatever resources necessary to eliminate you. Respect them, and you may operate as you wish while benefiting from Imperial restraint regarding your status. Do you find these terms acceptable? Marcus processed the offer carefully. It was better than he'd expected. Genuine operational independence with only minimal reporting requirements and restrictions against targeting core Imperial leadership. Palpatine was essentially granting him free agent status with consequences for attacking the Empire's essential interests. I accept those terms, Your Majesty, though I'd like clarification on one point. Systems where order is essential to galactic stability is somewhat subjective. How do I determine which systems fall under that category? Use your judgment, Palpatine replied, his smile returning. If you're considering a contract in a core world that might destabilize regional governance, consult with Imperial intelligence first. If you're eliminating a Hutt crime lord on Nar Shaddaa, I have no interest in the matter. The distinction should be obvious to someone of your intelligence. It was a reasonable answer that left gray areas Marcus could exploit while still establishing boundaries that protected Imperial core interests. He could work within those parameters. Understood, Your Majesty. I'll operate within those guidelines. See that you do, Palpatine said softly. And Marcus, I permitted your independence not because I believe you'll maintain it successfully, but because watching you attempt to do so will reveal the true nature of every faction that approaches you. The rebels will offer increasingly desperate contracts that expose their strategic priorities. The Hutts will attempt to bind you through debt and obligation. Other powers you haven't yet encountered will emerge from shadows to test whether you can be bought, controlled, or must be eliminated."
The Emperor leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. "You've chosen to walk a tightrope above an abyss where every faction sees you as either an asset to claim or a threat to remove. That requires constant vigilance, perfect judgment, and more luck than most beings are granted. I look forward to observing how long you survive before circumstances force you to accept protection from someone, whether that someone is the Empire, the rebels, or entities you haven't imagined yet. Until then, may your independence serve you as well as you believe it will." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus staring at a blank view screen and processing what had just occurred. He'd negotiated genuine independence from the Galactic Emperor himself. Palpatine had granted him free agent status with minimal restrictions, seemingly accepting Marcus's argument about the strategic value of a truly independent contractor. But the Emperor's final words carried implications that Marcus couldn't ignore. Palpatine didn't expect him to maintain independence successfully. The Emperor was allowing the experiment to continue specifically because watching Marcus's struggles would generate intelligence and reveal the nature of other factions. Marcus had become an intelligence asset without accepting employment. A trap so elegant he could almost admire it while recognizing the danger it represented. "Computer, open channels to Commander Vess and Jabba the Hutt's representatives. I need to clarify my status with all parties." The transmissions connected simultaneously, bringing Vess's voice and Jabba's image to separate screens. "Commander Vess, Lord Jabba, I've concluded negotiations with Emperor Palpatine. I'm operating as a genuinely independent contractor, not as an Imperial asset. That means I'll accept contracts from any party providing appropriate payment and targeting parameters that align with my operational principles. The Empire has agreed to tolerate my independence rather than attempting to control or destroy me." Vess's response was cautious. What conditions did Palpatine attach to that agreement?
"I've agreed to report intelligence on parties targeting core Imperial leadership and to avoid operations that destabilize systems essential to Imperial governance. Beyond that, I'm free to accept whatever contracts I deem appropriate, including rebel contracts, if you're still interested in hiring me." Jabba's laughter rumbled through the speakers. "The human has negotiated well. The cartel will have extensive use for a contractor with genuine independence and Imperial tolerance. We should discuss pricing structures for future services." Marcus nodded, feeling the first stirrings of something that might have been cautious optimism. He'd survived his confrontation with Palpatine, established operational independence, and positioned himself to work with multiple factions without exclusive loyalty to any single power. It wasn't perfect. He was still vulnerable, still dependent on maintaining that delicate balance between usefulness and threat, but it was survivable. "I'm open to discussing contracts with both parties. Standard terms, provide targeting parameters, and payment. I deliver results. No questions asked, as long as the target doesn't violate my agreement with the Empire regarding core Imperial leadership assets." We'll be in touch, Marcus. And, Marcus, thank you for refusing to become another Imperial weapon. What you've done here matters, even if you did it for practical reasons rather than ideological ones. The Rebel channel closed, leaving only Jabba's image on the screen. The Hutt studied Marcus with calculating intelligence that reminded him why crime lords in this galaxy controlled economic empires that rivaled planetary governments. The human should visit Nar Shaddaa's surface soon. The cartel wishes to formalize our business relationship and discuss long-term arrangements. There are parties who would prefer you eliminated before you become too established. The cartel can provide security that even Imperial tolerance cannot match.
Marcus recognized the offer for what it was, protection in exchange for deeper entanglement with Hutt interests. But protection had value when Imperial tolerance only extended as far as his usefulness exceeded his threat level. I'll consider the invitation, Lord Jabba. Let me establish secure orbital position first, then we can discuss longer-term arrangements. Jabba's smile suggested satisfaction. Wise. The cartel will await your visit. Until then, may your independence prove profitable. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone in his command center with only his AI for company. He pulled up his tactical displays, studying the orbital space around Nar Shaddaa with new understanding. The Devastator had withdrawn to the system's outer reaches, no longer an immediate threat, but still a reminder that Imperial tolerance could be revoked at any moment. Rebel ships maintained their careful concealment among civilian traffic, watching to see if his claimed independence was genuine or another Imperial deception. And throughout the moon's vertical cities, Hutt representatives calculated how to profit from a weapons dealer who just negotiated autonomy from the galaxy's dominant power. Computer, compile all data related to the Death Star project that Rebel intelligence mentioned. If the Empire is building a planet-destroying weapon, I need to understand how that changes galactic power dynamics and what it means for my business model. The AI processed the request efficiently, pulling together scattered intelligence reports, intercepted communications, and analysis that painted a disturbing picture. The Death Star was real, a battle station capable of destroying entire planets, currently in final construction phases. Operational capability was estimated at 6 to 8 weeks, possibly sooner if Imperial engineers accelerated the timeline. Marcus studied the data with growing unease. Vess had been right. A weapon that could destroy planets made precision orbital strikes strategically obsolete for military purposes. Why pay a contractor to eliminate a single target when you could threaten to annihilate their entire world unless they surrendered? But military obsolescence didn't mean complete irrelevance. The Death Star was a blunt instrument designed to terrify systems into compliance. It couldn't conduct discrete operations, couldn't eliminate specific individuals without destroying everything around them, and couldn't maintain plausible deniability about who was responsible for its deployment. That created niches where precision capability still had value, assuming Marcus could pivot his business model before the Death Star's completion rendered him strategically unimportant. Computer, begin compiling profiles on high-value targets that represent specialized elimination contracts rather than military objectives. Criminal leaders, corrupt officials, intelligence assets, political operatives, anyone whose removal serves factional interests but can't be addressed through conventional military force. Acknowledged. Specialized target database compilation begun. Estimated completion, 48 hours. Marcus nodded, feeling pieces of a longer-term strategy coming together. The Death Star would change everything, but change created opportunities for those smart enough to recognize them. He needed to position himself as essential for operations the Death Star couldn't perform. Discrete eliminations, intelligence operations, and contracts where destroying an entire planet was strategically counterproductive. A new transmission alert chimed. Marcus accepted the channel, expecting another communication from one of the major factions he'd been negotiating with. Instead, the view screen displayed a figure he didn't recognize. Human, middle-aged, wearing nondescript clothing that suggested either merchant class or skilled operative. "Marcus Vega," the figure said, without preamble. "My name is Ravik Sorn. I represent a collective of neutral systems in the Mid-Rim who have been watching your negotiation with the Empire with considerable interest. We have a proposition that might interest someone who values genuine independence." Marcus leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "I'm listening."
But military obsolescence didn't mean complete irrelevance. The Death Star was a blunt instrument designed to terrify systems into compliance. It couldn't conduct discrete operations, couldn't eliminate specific individuals without destroying everything around them, and couldn't maintain plausible deniability about who was responsible for its deployment. That created niches where precision capability still had value. Assuming Marcus could pivot his business model before the Death Star's completion rendered him strategically unimportant. Computer, begin compiling profiles on high-value targets that represent specialized elimination contracts rather than military objectives. Criminal leaders, corrupt officials, intelligence assets, political operatives, anyone whose removal serves factional interests but can't be addressed through conventional military force. Acknowledged. Specialized target database compilation begun. Estimated completion, 48 hours. Marcus nodded, feeling pieces of a longer-term strategy coming together. The Death Star would change everything, but change created opportunities for those smart enough to recognize them. He needed to position himself as essential for operations the Death Star couldn't perform. Discrete eliminations, intelligence operations, and contracts where destroying an entire planet was strategically counterproductive. A new transmission alert chimed. Marcus accepted the channel, expecting another communication from one of the major factions he'd been negotiating with. Instead, the view screen displayed a figure he didn't recognize. Human, middle-aged, wearing nondescript clothing that suggested either merchant class or skilled operative. "Marcus Vega," the figure said without preamble. "My name is Ravik Sorn. I represent a collective of neutral systems in the Mid-Rim who have been watching your negotiation with the Empire with considerable interest. We have a proposition that might interest someone who values genuine independence." Marcus leaned forward, curiosity piqued. "I'm listening."
"I need to review the specific terms of this deterrence contract," Marcus said finally. "Send me complete documentation on which systems you represent, what constitutes forced annexation that would trigger defensive obligations, and what limitations exist on my discretion regarding when and how to intervene. If the terms are acceptable, we can discuss formalization." Sorn nodded, apparently satisfied with that response. "Documentation will be transmitted within the hour. We look forward to potentially securing your services, Mr. Vega. True independence is rare in this galaxy. Those of us who value it are willing to pay well to protect it, both yours and ours." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus contemplating yet another dimension of the complex game he'd entered. The neutral systems saw him as potential protection against forced alignment with major factions. The Empire saw him as an intelligence asset whose independence would reveal enemy strategies. The rebels saw him as a potential ally who could be turned against Imperial tyranny. The Hutts saw him as a profitable tool to be controlled through debt and obligation. Everyone saw him as something to be used.
The challenge was remaining valuable to everyone simultaneously while controlled by no one, a balance that grew more precarious with every new faction that approached him. Computer, update survival probability assessment based on current situation. The AI processed variables for several seconds before responding. Current status, operationally independent, tolerated by Empire, targeted by rebels for potential recruitment, leveraged by Hutts for profit, approached by neutral systems for deterrence. Survival probability, highly variable depending on ability to maintain balanced relationships across multiple competing interests. Estimated range, 35% to 80% over next 6 months.
35 to 80%. Better odds than Marcus had faced when Vader first demanded his surrender, but still fundamentally uncertain. Everything depended on his ability to navigate factional politics, deliver valuable services without becoming dependent on any single patron, and recognize when circumstances shifted enough that his position became untenable. He pulled up the external view screens one final time, watching Nar Shaddah's neon-lit surface rotating below and the stars beyond. Somewhere in this vast galaxy, the Death Star was being completed, a weapon that would fundamentally change power dynamics and render conventional military force almost irrelevant in the face of planet-destroying capability. Somewhere, rebel cells were planning desperate operations against impossible odds. Somewhere, the Emperor was calculating how to exploit every element in the galaxy to consolidate his power. And here, in orbit above a moon controlled by crime lords, Marcus Vega operated an orbital weapons platform and tried to carve out independence in a galaxy that didn't really allow for neutrality. The orbital cannon hummed with ready power, systems fully charged and capable of eliminating whatever target Marcus designated. He'd survived his first major crisis in this new reality, established genuine operational independence through a combination of leverage and negotiation, and positioned himself to profit from the chaos that seemed endemic to a galaxy torn by civil war. Whether that independence would last 6 weeks or 6 years remained to be seen, but for now, Marcus Vega had achieved what he'd set out to accomplish: genuine autonomy in a galaxy where everyone else served someone. The comm system chimed with incoming transmission requests, contracts from Hutt intermediaries, targeting parameters from rebel operatives, intelligence requests from Imperial sources, and proposals from factions Marcus hadn't yet identified. The business of precision elimination continued, and Marcus had a platform to operate and a reputation to build.
But independence came with costs. Every faction saw him as something to be used, controlled, or eliminated. The Empire tolerated his operation only as long as his value exceeded his threat. The rebels hoped to turn him against tyranny. The Hutts sought to bind him through debt and profit. And somewhere in the shadows, other powers watched and calculated whether the orbital weapons dealer represented opportunity or existential threat. The Death Star loomed on the horizon, a weapon that would make precision strikes strategically obsolete for military purposes. Marcus had weeks, perhaps months, to pivot his business model toward operations that planet-destroying battle stations couldn't perform. Discrete eliminations, intelligence operations, contracts where surgical precision mattered more than overwhelming force. He'd survived his arrival in the Star Wars galaxy through a combination of capability, negotiation, and calculated risk-taking. Whether he'd thrive in this new reality remained uncertain. The Emperor had been right about one thing. Independence required walking a tightrope above an abyss where every step might be the one that sent him plummeting. But Marcus Vega had built a career on surviving impossible situations. He'd faced military forces, intelligence agencies, and criminal enterprises in his original reality. Now he faced Sith Lords, rebel insurgents, and crime families that controlled economic empires spanning star systems. He selected the first contract request and began reviewing targeting parameters. The galaxy needed problems eliminated. Marcus Vega had a cannon in orbit, and for the first time since arriving in this reality, he felt like he might actually survive long enough to matter. Marcus Vega had entered the Star Wars galaxy as an outsider, wielding a weapon this reality had never encountered. An orbital platform capable of eliminating targets with surgical precision that even the Empire's vast military couldn't match. In the span of days, he'd navigated confrontations with Darth Vader, negotiated autonomy from Emperor Palpatine himself, and established a position as genuinely independent contractor in a galaxy that typically forced everyone to choose sides. Different galaxy, different players, same fundamental game: survive, profit, and maintain autonomy against everyone who wanted to control you. The orbital cannon waited in orbit above Nar Shaddaa, ready to eliminate whatever problems the galaxy presented, and Marcus Vega, independent contractor from beyond the stars, prepared to discover whether freedom was possible in a galaxy at war or just an illusion maintained until circumstances forced everyone to choose a side. The Force might bind all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web, but Marcus Vega operated outside that ancient power, a wild element in a galaxy of Jedi and Sith, bringing precision death from orbit and hoping independence proved more durable than prophecy suggested. Only time would tell if he'd become a legend or a cautionary tale. But either way, the galaxy would remember the man who brought the orbital cannon to the stars.
Marcus Vega had entered the Star Wars galaxy as an outsider, wielding a weapon this reality had never encountered. An orbital platform capable of eliminating targets with surgical precision that even the Empire's vast military couldn't match. In the span of days, he'd navigated confrontations with Darth Vader, negotiated autonomy from Emperor Palpatine himself, and established a position as genuinely independent contractor in a galaxy that typically forced everyone to choose sides. The journey from arrival to independence had been treacherous. His first demonstration, vaporizing Gracchus the Hutt's palace complex, had announced his presence to every faction in the sector. The subsequent standoff with Imperial forces had nearly ended in his destruction or enslavement. But through a combination of leverage, strategic thinking, and calculated risk-taking, Marcus had transformed a desperate survival situation into something resembling genuine autonomy. The key had been recognizing what each faction truly valued. The Empire wanted control and intelligence on their enemies. The rebels needed hope that not everyone would submit to tyranny. The Hutts saw profit in a contractor who could eliminate rivals without political complications. The neutral systems required deterrence against forced annexation. By positioning himself as valuable to everyone simultaneously while controlled by no one, Marcus had created a balance precarious enough to be dangerous, but stable enough to be survivable. But independence came with costs that Marcus was only beginning to understand. Emperor Palpatine had granted him operational autonomy not because he believed Marcus would maintain it successfully, but because watching the attempt would generate intelligence on every faction that approached him. The Sith Lord was playing chess with the entire galaxy, and Marcus had just agreed to be a piece on that board, albeit a piece with more freedom of movement than most.
Every contract he accepted would reveal priorities and strategies of the parties hiring him. Every target he eliminated would shift power dynamics in ways both obvious and subtle. Every faction he worked with would attempt to bind him through debt, obligation, or dependency disguised as partnership. The Hutts would offer lucrative contracts that slowly transformed into tribute demands. The rebels would present increasingly desperate operations that exposed their strategic vulnerabilities. The Empire would watch everything, cataloging intelligence and waiting for the moment when Marcus's threat level exceeded his usefulness. The Death Star loomed on the horizon like a death sentence for his business model. A battle station capable of destroying entire planets would render precision orbital strikes strategically obsolete for military purposes. Why pay a contractor to eliminate a governor when you could threaten to annihilate their entire world unless they surrendered? Marcus had weeks, perhaps months, to pivot toward operations that planet-destroying weapons couldn't perform. Discrete eliminations, intelligence operations, contracts where surgical precision mattered more than overwhelming force.
The Neutral Systems Deterrence Contract offered one path forward. 5 million credits monthly to maintain defensive capability against forced annexation meant steady income that didn't depend on accepting morally questionable contracts. But it also meant accepting responsibility for defending territory against both Imperial and Rebel forces if circumstances required it. That could easily transform from insurance policy to suicide mission if either major faction decided neutral system resources were worth conquering regardless of cost. Marcus understood that he'd traded one form of vulnerability for another. In his original reality, he'd survived by remaining anonymous, by ensuring that no government or corporation could identify him long enough to mount an effective response. Here, everyone knew who he was, where he operated, and what he was capable of. His survival depended not on anonymity, but on maintaining political complexity, on being too useful to eliminate and too expensive to control. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had sought independence by refusing to serve any single master, only to discover that true independence required serving everyone simultaneously. The tightrope Palpatine had described was real. One misstep, one contract that tilted the balance too far in any faction's favor, and the careful equilibrium would collapse into chaos that ended with his station as orbital debris. But Marcus Vega had built a career on surviving impossible situations. He'd faced military forces, intelligence agencies, and criminal enterprises across multiple realities now. The players were different: Sith Lords instead of government agents, rebel insurgents instead of freedom fighters, crime families that controlled star systems instead of city blocks. But the fundamental game remained the same: survive, profit, and maintain autonomy against everyone who wanted to control you. The orbital cannon waited in orbit above Nar Shaddaa, systems charged and ready. Across the galaxy, factions calculated how to use, control, or eliminate the independent weapons dealer who'd carved out space in their civil war. The Death Star approached completion in secret shipyards. The Emperor watched with patient malevolence. The rebels fought desperate battles. The Hutts pursued profit. And Marcus navigated between them all, hoping that cunning and capability would prove sufficient substitutes for the force that bound everyone else in this galaxy. He'd survived his arrival. He'd established independence. Now came the harder part, maintaining it long enough to matter in a galaxy that was about to change forever. The Force might bind all things, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But Marcus Vega operated outside that ancient power, a wild element in a galaxy of prophecy and mysticism. He brought precision death from orbit, conducted business with tyrants and rebels alike, and gambled everything on the belief that intelligence and capability could carve out freedom even in a galaxy at war. Whether he'd become a legend or a cautionary tale remained to be seen, but the galaxy would remember the day the orbital canon entered the Star Wars universe, and the man who refused to let anyone control the finger on its trigger. In the end, that might be the only independence that truly mattered.